Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a unique little airplane here. This is the Cub Crafter's X-Cub. If you want to think about this aircraft as, oh, it's another Piper Cub, it actually is not. If you actually want to think about it as anything, it's really a Cessna 172, but it's a tail dragger, and somebody knocked out 2 seats. So as a result, you have a very, very high-performance aircraft that's actually got a lot of really, really neat little bells and whistles on it. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we want to get this thing rolling. I've got this thing full of fuel. I've got my passengers. Everybody's looking nice and comfortable on board. Again, relatively straightforward. We got a G3X here, which makes our life so much simpler in which to operate. As usual, what we would normally want to do is we want to go ahead and deploy everything and go double check it. So we'd pop our flaps down on both sides. We go under there, reach them. We'd give everything a quick little wiggle to make sure it's working properly. We climb inside. We give a quick little briefing to everybody on board. Kind of an interesting thing, too, is if I want to try to do this backseat operation, they don't let you do that, which is kind of a bummer, but it's not too bad. All right, let's get this thing rolling. So we want to go ahead and turn the fuel on first, and we're going to put on the fullest tank. In this case, we have a choice between the left, the right. It does not make a difference. Generally, what I like to do is I like to take whatever time of day it is, and look at that side of the clock as far as the minute hand goes. So if it were like, 7:15, for example, we could go ahead and point that to the right. If it were 7:45, we'd put it over there to the left. In this case, I think our local time is 8:58, so we're going to go ahead and point it over to the right because I'm pretty much right away it's going to be in that position. So we're going to hit the master switch. It's going to click everything on for us pretty much right away. Going to go activate our alternator switch as well. Again, not too much for this particular one. This is a fuel injected. This is actually a Lycoming 0360. It's the same engine they have on a 172. And it's, like I said, just sits there right in front of us. Like we're basically could kick it from bottom while using our pedals right here, which I think, like I said, is absolutely wild that we can even do something like that. So we're going to go ahead and double check to make sure everything else is looking pretty good. Looking real quickly, walking through all my stuff, looking through my controls. We're going to go ahead and let everybody else know that we're about to get started. So we're going to pop all those 2 items on. Interestingly, my avionics master is off. Oh well, it happens. We're going to turn on to ignition. We're going to turn on our fuel pump. We're going to go ahead and send that mixture control all the way forward. We're going to go ahead and push the throttle all the way forward to prime. Go ahead and back off, shut off our fuel pump right there. I'm going to look around, make sure I'm not going to chop anybody up unintentionally. Obviously, we only want to chop people up intentionally here. Pull the mixture control out. We're going to go ahead and crank this thing and then jam the mixture control in once it starts to catch. Again, it will not take much to get this thing started. This is a very modern aircraft. And that's it. That's great. Go ahead and give it just a little tiny bit of thrust here to get it nice and warmed up. Man, that thing starts nice. I like that. We're actually a little high. Now, this aircraft, like I said, it's the exact same engine you can get on a 172, so we have our 2 little settings down here. Big interesting thing here is even though this says it's all the way back, I actually had to push it all the way forward, and now it's all set for us. Go ahead and give it just a few RPM to go ahead and get this thing warmed up. Pressure is good, temperature is good, cylinder head temperature is actually warmed up very, very quickly. Our little trip today, by the way, we're sitting here, as you can see, if I zoom in way, way, way in here, this is a Sherman Airport. This is basically right on the mouth of the Panama Canal, and we're basically going to be flying along the canal and landing down there in the south, which should actually be a pretty good relaxing flight for us. All right, I'm going to go double check everything, make sure it's okay. Barometric pressure set. Good time to go ahead and turn on the avionics master, which we have turned on now. All that stuff is good. I'm going to look up here, make sure we got plenty of fuel on board. Looks pretty good on that side. Looks pretty good on that side. I love this flap handle, by the way. It's just a clink. And I exactly put it in there. Also, I could get the little autopilot disconnect here. Let's go ahead and get our automatic pilot. I'll pre-select it as we're starting to warm up. Speaking of warm up, let's actually get this thing to appropriate speed here. We're going to go ahead and cruise at a very low altitude of 1,500 feet today. This thing just sort of wants to run away on you. Looks pretty good. We're going to make sure our VOR is set. Uh-oh, where's the button for that? Where's the button? Click. CDI looks pretty good. Go ahead and close that one out. We don't need that anymore. We don't even need the split mode. We can do this mode if we want. We can go over here. We can go to the menu. We can change our map. Of course, I can do my display. You can see I can actually dim the brightness on it just a little bit if I wanted to, but the photo cell is doing a pretty good job of it. So I'm really not going to stress out about that too much here. Let's go ahead and go back again. That looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with it. Go ahead and make sure that's set. Transponder, we're going to put it to the altitude mode just to let everybody around us know that we're ready to go. And I'm going to kind of take a peek around, and everything's looking pretty good. So we're dealing with a tail dragger aircraft, so be very, very gentle with your turns. And again, remember, this thing is going to have... What the heck are you doing? It's going to have a tendency to kind of spin you around if you get this thing going a little bit too much. So I'm going to go ahead and push my left rudder and basically give it a little blast to thrust here. And it's just going to go pivot us in place almost as if you're like a little helicopter. Before we get there, we're going to go ahead and neutralize. And we're just going to very, very, very slowly, gently, and carefully make our way over to the runway here. Pretty darn short runway from what I see. I'm actually going to go ahead and come down this little nasty grass strip here to give ourselves a little bit more room for takeoff. We're actually going to go ahead and drop in a notch of flaps as well. Now, you're probably looking at this aircraft going, oh, it's just like all the other Piper Cubs. You can just go rev, rev, and zip down the runway with this thing. Actually, it's more like a 172. I'll go ahead and pull the throttle back just a little bit. I'm also going to pull my stick back all the way towards my chest. We don't want to be digging in. Obviously, we got a huge advantage here because of the fact we are a tail dragger. We're less likely to strike the propeller into the ground. We're also going to take advantage of its extra little bit of stability, too, as you'll see once we get airborne. All right, go ahead and give it just a little bit of left foot here. Again, you'd be surprised how effective the rudder is with this one. Take a look out the window. As you can see, I got my controls all set. I'm going to just kind of go bounce along all the way down to the end. Sherman Airport is this very tiny airport. Literally looking at it, basically right on the west mouth of the opening of the Panama Canal on the north side. Like I said, we're basically going to be scooting all the way down. All right, looks pretty good. Obviously, runway behind us is worthless. We want to always make sure that. This thing going, kind of bouncing around. Looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and buy this true right here, and we'll go ahead and spin this thing around and begin our warm-up procedures here. Whenever you use the brakes, go gentle so you don't do a faceplant. Faceplants are embarrassing. All right, give ourselves a little teeny tiny bit of rudder. We'll get this thing coming around very quickly. We want to point into the wind for our run-up. That'll do right there. Set my parking brake. Let's go ahead and run this thing up. That looks pretty good. About 1,800 RPM is the sweet spot. And that looks pretty solid right there. Oop, a little too much. Perfect. Let's go ahead and kill one of the magnetos. Good. Let's go ahead and kill the other magneto. Good. Let's go ahead and now pull out the carburetor heat. Good. Ooh, that carburetor heat really kills it. Pull that one out. Okay, so now we have a fun one. We have the blue handle now. Pull this back. It should go... That's my sound effect added. It doesn't actually work that way. All right, looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and pull the throttle all the way back. Does the engine die on us? Doesn't look like it. It's actually pretty warmed up now. I'll give it just a little bit of power, and now we are ready for takeoff. Let's go ahead and take a look out. Make sure the approach is clear. It looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and release the parking brake, and we're going to come sneaking our way over onto the runway one more time. All right, let's do it. All right, nice and easy, nice and easy. Again, make sure our one notch of flaps is in, which it is. Okay, so we're going to have to do a short field takeoff here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure my controls are working properly. Feels pretty good. We'll take a look at our flaps and make sure they're set correctly one last time. They are. We're going to go ahead and smoothly pull back just a teeny tiny bit on the stick. Again, you don't want to be going like doing one of these things and take off because you will do a face plant. So pull that back a little bit. Smoothly apply full throttle. Wait until we get up to maximum RPM. And we're just going to ease off the brakes and get ready to use some fancy footwork. What's going to happen first is the tail's going to gently lift off, but that's perfectly fine. We just want to go ahead and keep our controls basically as neutral as possible during this. Looking for an airspeed of about 55 knots, which by no coincidence is about the same speed as a Cessna. And we are now airborne and on our way once again. I have the urge to go ahead and pull up our landing gear, but we don't need to. This is a fixed landing gear aircraft. Okay, delightful. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing flying. Now, this aircraft has a waggly tail, so you're going to have to be pretty quick with your rudder pedals when you're going to be taking any turns with this thing. Again, the primary device you're going to be using for that is going to be this one right here. Like, if I do it wrong, you can see those needles pretty much going nuts there. We come spinning around here and start making our way on our direct course for where we're traveling to today. We'll go ahead and take a look at some of the sites. It should be pretty cool on the way there. There we go. Go ahead and start canceling that turn out a little bit. Yeah, not bad, not bad. This thing likes to fly. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and activate some automatic pilot. And we are on automatic pilot now. Just confirm that everything works correctly. Flight director turned on. Looks like it's trying to level us off a little bit. Remember, we're only up to 1,500 feet here. All right. Time to go ahead and set our RPM correctly. We're pretty revved up here, so we're going to head back this out until we get to about 2,500 RPM. That's considered a pretty safe RPM for this airplane as far as all handling properly goes. So once you set it, you can kind of forget it until you have to come in for landing, of course. Nice. You know, I knew it was going to do that. I knew it. I knew it. There we go. Delightful. All right, we're going to come up to our 1,500 feet, and then we're going to basically start enjoying our... Look at the locks. All the locks. Look, like the amount of shipping and warehousing and everything here. It's mind-boggling how much of this stuff is going on right here. And again, we'll get a pretty good look at it as we start to kind of cruise over the top here. And the neat thing, too, is there's this gigantic breaker, which pretty much calms this entire haul down quite a bit. And obviously, you've got the brand new things, and you've got your locks and everything like that. We're basically going to cruise right across the top here, heading for our destination. Again, you're going to notice this thing picks up speed very quickly, and it actually climbs quite a bit faster because it's going to have a little bit less drag because of its arrangement. Seems to be something wrong with the locks here. Now, there was actually reading in the news recently that they were trying to put another canal basically to the north up this way, up in Costa Rica. Obviously, the Panamanian government's not doing that. That's competition. That looks pretty good. 2,500 RPM. About 1,500 feet, we'll go ahead and set our cruise power, which we're just going to go ahead and back the throttle down until we get to about 25 inches. There we go, 25 inches, about 2,500 RPM. We can now go ahead and set our mixture. Difficult to set the mixture on here. This is our EGT gauge, so we're going to go ahead and gently pull it back. And we just want to monitor to see if we see any change in EGT, which it apparently seems to be going down. Go ahead and play with it just a little bit more. Let's see what we got here, 93%. That looks pretty good. And now we are nice and leaned out. Now, some of you are saying, I thought you're supposed to lean the engine out when you get over 3,000 feet. You can technically lean the engine out at any time. Your engine actually always runs pretty rich. Let's take a look here. We've got ourselves that nice little bridge. It's actually a much, much taller bridge than it looks here. And, of course, we have our first set of locks right in there. And we're going to go ahead and pass over the top of this lake and kind of make our way due south here. And try to, not quite due south, but, you know, a little bit off to the side. Now, this is the Lago Gatun, in case you're curious. It's actually a very big lake. And an interesting thing is when traffic does fly in here, basically, I'm going to talk about ship traffic, not airplane traffic, obviously. They actually come around this way, and the other group will actually be coming in this way as well, and they kind of make like this sort of like loop. It's absolutely wild. And the actual difference in altitude between here and the actual ocean here is actually pretty significant. It's pretty neat, pretty neat. All right, we're just going to kind of cruise along here. There's actually a really neat railway, if I recall correctly. I don't actually remember. There it is. So if you want to take a really, really scenic ride as far as cruising around here in Panama, you can't do worse than taking that particular one. So we'll go ahead and skip our trip a little bit and take ourselves all the way down to where our top of descent is. All right, we've got about 5 minutes or so to go before we get to our destination. This is kind of neat because we get to kind of see the bottom part of all of these the areas of the work of the Panama Canal. Now, this is where the real tough part of the Panama Canal was, when they had to do all this basically digging out and getting everything ready here. It's actually pretty wild because there are not a lot of bridges that actually cross the canal itself. You know, if you're looking across, you got a couple bridges on this side and you got a couple bridges basically on that side, but there's not a lot in the middle of the lake itself. Take a look over our left-hand side here. This is basically 11:30 here. This is going to come in up on Panama City, which is going to be our ultimate destination. Now, the interesting thing is, and I can't figure this one out at all, is the most major airport of major airports in Panama City is actually not present here. That's Tucumán International. We're actually going to be flying into a Marcos Galeve, which is Papa Mike Golf. I'm sure there'll be an extension later on that'll probably bring that back into the world, kind of a thing like that. Now, the neat thing here is, as you look through here, you got this is a mega bridge. You can see the last little bit of the locks here. This is basically going to take you all the way over to the Pacific Ocean. It's really a shame that we don't get to see the individual ships basically racking themselves up into that queue, trying to get in and out of this. But at the very least, you can get a pretty good idea of just what the scale of all this actually is. Okay, so Marcos Galeve is where we're going to be flying into. This is the small airport. This is not the big one. The big one's actually, you would think it would be visible from here, but like I said, for whatever reason, they chose not to model it. I'm not sure why. Yep, you can see the two different locks here for the purposes of basically getting them in and out. Kind of have the in and out, and you can actually change directions depending on what time of day it is, and it's all pretty cool. It's neat. And the scary thing is how much money it costs to use this canal. It's still cheaper to use this canal than it is to go ahead and go through. And there's even a concept called a Panamax, which would basically be a ship so big that you can't be bigger than it and still be able to fit through this canal. Okay, let's go ahead and get this thing ready for landing. Our pattern altitude is going to be 1,000 feet, which is kind of nice for a change, only on account of the fact that because we are so darn small and because we're not very high, it's not going to be that big of a deal here. So let's go ahead and set their altitude. We're going to do 1,000 feet. We're going to begin our descent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull the throttle back to get us to about 22 inches. I'm going to go ahead and press IAS, and that's going to get us descending very, very smoothly down to our altitude that we need to get to for the purposes of putting this thing down on the ground. I'm getting bounced around a teeny tiny bit, but nothing too bad here. I can probably add a little bit of power here. There we go. Perfect. Too much. It becomes the vicious game every single time. Interesting. Come on, Azure AI. Where were you on that one? And the interesting thing with Panama is there's just a fabulous amount of people who live in this part of the region. Once you start heading far east or far west, the population density drops significantly. And again, it's just fascinating how, like infrastructure and how people build themselves around it and everything like that. Just kind of neat, that's all. All right, we don't want to get accelerating too quick here, because otherwise we run ourselves into a situation where we've run out of room, or we can't slow down in time. More common problem. Oh, you can see one of these ships apparently sank. Oh well. Yeah, you can see the two different sets here, how they expanded all of this basically to make room so they could send two different types of ships in at a time, which I think is pretty wild. Again, not only do you have to worry about width, you also have to worry about draft. And apparently somebody actually tried to swim through the Panama Canal at one point, and actually was charged like $6 or something like that in order to get through. I just found that kind of interesting. Okay, so Enson. So now this is a teeny tiny airport, and it's a very, very, very tiny runway, and unfortunately there is a mountain right in the way that makes things a little bit more exciting than it probably. So what we're going to have to do here is really, really cautiously kind of do this weird oblique pattern to go ahead and bring this thing down onto the ground. Unfortunately, our wind is basically directly behind us, which makes things a little bit more annoying for us. But again, there's always a crosswind, and it's just part of the fun, I guess. All right, we're going to go ahead and follow the major highway, and there's our runway. See what I mean by like a weird oblique angle here? Like I said, why can't we go to Tokuman? It's right there. It's right there. Oh, well, they're just not going to let us do this. But we do get a good view of the city, and you can see some of the really neat buildings down there. Here's our destination. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross, do the world's most aggressive left, 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 left turn, and now bring ourselves down for landing. Obviously, we have a pretty nasty mountain here, so in the event that we had to go around again, we're going to be in a pretty nasty spot. We have to make sure we have to take a right turn to get out of there. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Actually, we're doing fine here. Reset my view. Go ahead, kill the automatic pilot. Whee! All right, I'm going to go ahead and start reducing speed very early here. We really need to get this thing to slow down. Very aerodynamic airplane. Getting some pretty real turbulence off the ground there. Typical, by the way, Pacific Ocean. That's how short of a flight it is. Love that. I'm looking at my left window here. We're going to go ahead and cross. There's our runway 19er. And we're going to go put ourselves into a left traffic pattern. We've lost a lot of energy here, but that was intentional. I'm going to go ahead and bring down our first notch of flaps now that we're in the pattern. And we're not going to do the next one until we get to about 70 knots. Go ahead and take my left turn. And looking pretty good so far. Man, we're getting bounced around. Jeez. Pretty sharp for a turn in a traffic pattern, I know, but oh well. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start leveling off. Looks pretty good. Got the left window there. Whoop, swinging a little bit. That's the end of the runway. Going to pull the throttle back the rest of the way. We're going to wait for the speed to come down a little bit before we go ahead and bring down our next notch of flaps. There we are, and we're going to go ahead and start a nice gentle descent. About 500 feet per minute is going to work out. And again, be pretty aggressive on the trim there. Going to go ahead and readjust our RPM, bring it up to full, which is actually going to help slow us down and moderate our speed. We have a big mountain in the way, so we're not going to be able to do a full approach here because we'll smack right into it. So we'll go ahead and take ourselves a nice gentle left turn. This will be a nice short base. I believe in the real world this is actually a right traffic pattern for this exact reason. Alright, looks pretty good. Bring us down a little bit more. Final approach speed is going to be right around 65 knots. I'm sure these folks do not like me doing this. Go ahead and bring down our last notch of flaps. Ooh, pull that one in a little bit. That's all right. So we're going to be aiming for the 2-point turn on this one, or 2-point landing, I should say. So basically what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to land on 2 tires and then gently bring down the back tire. All right, looking pretty good. Getting a little slow here. Going to bring in a little extra power. Again, we have to kind of dive into this little pit as we come down. Since we are such a tiny airplane, we're going to aim for the numbers rather than the lights. Throttle comes back a little bit more. There we go. So we're going to have to nose up just a tiny bit during our landing. We're not looking for a 3-point. We're just looking for a nice gentle 2-point. And we're just going to fly down onto those 2 tires and smoothly reduce our throttle. And then as the engine starts to slow down, we start to slow down. The nose itself is going to start coming up. Don't pull back too aggressively, because if you do, you're going to end up finding yourself flying again. There we go. Nice and smooth on the brakes. And we are all set. Not bad at all. That was actually one of the smoother landings I think I've done on one of these in a long time. So that's it as far as this aircraft goes. Securing it if you needed to. You can go ahead and set the parking brake. Shutting this thing down, just a matter of pulling out the mixture control all the way. Clicking off all your switches that you need to worry about. And you're pretty much ready to go at that point. Enjoy.